Today's reading from Abhidhuta Gita, the Song of the Abhidhut, the Awakened One. The one reality is ever the same. This is what all the wise ones say. Whether you embrace or renounce desires, the one consciousness remains unaffected. If you see the world as other than the self, can that be the experience of unity? If you see it as the self, can that be the experience of unity? If it's seen as both the self and not the self, can that be the experience of unity? The true state of freedom is to see everything as one. You are the pure reality, always the same. You have no body, no birth, and no death. How then can you say, I know the self? Or how can you say, I don't know the self? The saying, that thou art, tat tvam asi, affirms the reality of your own true self. The saying, not this, neti, neti, denies the reality of the five composite elements. The self is the identity of everyone. You are everything, the unbroken whole. The thinker and the thought do not even exist. O mind, how can you go on thinking so shamelessly? I do not know Shiva. How can I speak of him? I do not know Shiva. How can I worship him? I myself am Shiva, the primal essence of all. My nature, like the sky, remains ever the same. I am the essence, the all-pervading essence. I have no form of my own. I'm beyond the division of subject and object. How could I possibly be an object to myself? There is no such thing as an infinite form. The infinite reality has no form of its own. The One Self, the Supreme Reality, neither creates, nor sustains, nor destroys anything. You are that pure and unchanging essence. You have no body, no birth, and no death. For you, how could such a thing as delusion exist? How could delusion exist for the self? When a jar is broken, the space that was inside merges into the space outside. In the same way, my mind has merged in God. To me, there appears no duality. Truly, there is no jar, no space within. There is no body and no soul encased. Please understand, everything is Brahman, God. There is no subject, no object, no separate parts. Everywhere, always, and in everything. Know this, the self alone exists. Everything, both the void and the manifested world, is nothing but myself. Of this I am certain. There are no divine scriptures, no world, no imperative religious practices. There are no gods, no classes or races of men, no stages of life, no superior or inferior. There is nothing but Brahman, God, the supreme reality. The subject and object are unseparated and inseparable. That undivided one is you. When this is so, when no other exists, how could the self be objectively perceived? Non-duality is taught by some others teach duality. They don't understand that the all-pervading reality is beyond both duality and non-duality. There is no color or sound to the one reality. It has no qualities at all. How can one even think or speak of that which is far beyond both mind and speech? When you know all this universe of forms to be as vacant as the sky, then you'll know Brahman, God, and duality will forever cease to be. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So in this part of the Avadhuta Gita, the Song of the Avadhut, the Avadhut's using a literary technique, you could say, that's used very commonly in India. And this is the tool of negation. And so what he does is he tells us, you are that. And all of the sages have used this same type of technique. And of course, one of the things they explain is that there isn't any definition of that. And what all the great traditions have always done, for the sake of seekers and devotees, is to try to find ways in which to explain the unexplainable. And so when he begins to go down this list, negating all of the practices, all of the tradition, all of the scriptures, everything that's ever been given by the sages, all he's doing is reminding us that while these methods are taught, they aren't it. They aren't that. This is the paradox of instruction, isn't it? Is that in order to understand something about our nature, we have to begin by in some way exposing that which veils our nature. That, of course, being the mind. And so this is a form of another classical technique in Vedanta and Eastern spiritual tradition and philosophy. And that is the removal of a thorn by using a thorn. And so if we have to find some way to see beyond the mind, we have to use the mind, don't we? Because the mind is the veil. It's what prevents us from knowing just directly, I am that. Being, consciousness, bliss. You are that. Tat tvamasi. Thou art that. And so always, as I talk about here a lot with you all, there is this necessity in some way, because the mind causes such confusion. This you're all familiar with. The mind causes such confusion that we have to initially begin with some ways of pushing things aside. We have to begin to consciously look at the objects which we see in front of our eyes, in front of our mind when our eyes are closed, in the world, and begin with the conceptual understanding, this is not reality. So even though it appears that way very directly to us, doesn't it? Because we feel, we hear, taste, touch, smell, all of this appears very real. So the concept is that this is not reality is first introduced, so that the question, well then if all of this is not reality, what is reality, can arise. And this is the point of this kind of exercise. In a way, it's a challenge to the mind, isn't it? It's a challenge to all the beliefs that we've held throughout a lifetime, or lifetimes. And this is the point of the inquiry, of asking the question, who am I? What is this? What is aware? Am I aware? All these forms of the inquiry are pointing at this same thing and giving us the opportunity to pull back from the belief that we are the experiences we're having, that what we are tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, seeing, thinking, feeling is real, to ask the question, well, if these things are not real, then what is reality? Is there a reality? And of course the scriptures say, and experience says, by those who know, that there is a reality, and it's that which is free from the beliefs, I am the body, I am the mind. And that when we come to this place of knowing that we are not the body and not the mind, we come to see that which we are, unborn, undying, unmoving, stillness. And we begin to see that all of the other experiences of mind, of body, of world, of life are empty. It's not that they don't have an impact on us when we give them attention. It's that inherently there is no self in them. They are just the objects which arise in mind. And out of the compositions of the mind, the world is created. So the inquiry is always encouraging us to look back toward the source of where all of this came from. And it begins with negation. And then again, we've talked about this a lot. Begins with negation, but it ends with unity. This is another paradox in the teaching, isn't it? We're saying, this is not real, not this, not this, not this. This doesn't exist, this doesn't exist. And turning toward that which is here, prior to all the arisings in body, mind, and world. The awareness itself, consciousness. It's through doing that that we're able to see that as consciousness flows, has that perception of flowing anyway, to the mind it looks like it flows. Consciousness, of course, is completely still. It doesn't move, it doesn't want anything, it doesn't generate anything. It's mind which does that. Consciousness remains firmly embedded in itself and doesn't have the need to move in any direction. But there is this sense of movement which we experience initially as the I thought. That's the first place that we experience this movement of cosmic energy that we call the world, is with the I thought. This is the very first thought we have in the morning when we awake. The very first thing we do before we move on the bed is check in and make sure everything is here and make sure that we're okay. How am I? We actually ask this question subconsciously. We check everything. How is everything? This comes out of the I thought. Next will come, what do I have to do today? Right? This is the projection of consciousness or awareness into the world itself through the I thought. And then from there we get up off the bed and begin to move into the construct of the mind that we call the world. So this is how it appears to us. What we do when we begin the inquiry or when we've taken up the inquiry is we're making an effort throughout the day to remain at this first moment of recognition, I, which we experience very first thing in the morning. Most of the time we skip over that. We don't really notice that. It just becomes our habit first to begin our shopping list or whatever it is that we do in the morning. Move toward our cushion for some of us, whatever our habit is first thing in the morning. We begin that. And we don't really notice that it's the I itself which has arisen, or the sense of I-ness, we can say. The sense of I-ness has arisen, and out of that, the whole day moves forward, explodes in a way for some people. But we don't notice that. What the inquiry does is call us back to this moment, calls us to still the mind by these techniques which say, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. By noticing throughout the day that even as we move through the activity of the mind and body in the day, the mind and body activity of the day has no inherent selfness. It's empty. It's just movement. It's happening throughout the day. In the mind, in the senses, and in the world. And that this movement appears to be pretty much continuous. And of course, because it is that, it keeps the attention out there. The movement is enticing. The stillness, not so much. Not in the beginning. Over time, our practice or our inquiry, which draws us back from the objects themselves and puts our attention back toward first the body, first the breath, secondly the breath, coming more and more inwardly, until we're asking the question, and what is aware of this? We're referring to the objects, referring to the sensations, referring to the body, but we're not really interested in that. We're interested in what's at the foundation of that, the source of that. This is the meaning of the question, who am I? What is aware of this? And by doing that, we actually begin to use another, I recently heard about this. This is not something that's coming from me. This is something that I read about. There's actually an ability of the mind, when it's removed from its objects, to rest in its own nature, you can say. Neuroscientists are now understanding this, that if we begin to practice withdrawing attention from that which is outside of ourselves, from the world, from the objects outside, not to say that they're good or bad, just that this is something that the mind is capable of. We can begin to withdraw attention from the outside. What actually happens in the mind is that there is a gap created, a space in which we're able to rest as the awareness itself, without so much interest or attention or movement of energy toward the objects, whether the objects are the senses themselves, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing, thinking, so on, feeling, emoting, or in the world. So we're able to do this, and the more that we do it, the more we're able to come to this stillness, which after a while we begin to recognize, this is the reality that the scriptures have been talking about for thousands of years. That there is a suchness, there is an isness, which is not dependent upon mind, not dependent upon body, not even dependent upon I, or the felt sense, I am here. That's always here, isn't it, in the waking state? Which is one of the reasons why we use it as a support. We come back over and over to the notion that I am here, or I am aware, and we notice that. And in doing so, the mind is given the opportunity to drop its interest in all of the other outward-facing objects and look at its own nature. This nature being stillness, emptiness. These words are also used in all the traditions. Suchness. And in doing this, we come to know ourselves as something far greater than the limited experiences of mind, body, and world. And these are the ways in which the traditional teachings are used as the tools that begin to move us further and further back toward this essence, this source. In a way, it can be said that what the Avadhut is telling us here, though, is that in order to make this final step, what we have to do now is drop all that. So in the same way that we've dropped everything else, now we must drop the practice that we've been using to come back to this place of knowing that I am aware. The Buddha might say, to do this, is to come to know Buddha nature. Sri Ramana would simply say, this is the way to know who you are. And both would say, in doing so, you eliminate suffering in your own life. Why? Because you eliminate attachment to body, mind, and world, to otherness. And you come to recognize this unity which the Avadhut is speaking about, which is your nature prior to the experience I am. This dove is trying to come to satsang.
We said loud, man.
Ramana was a great lover of animals, and that's one of the things that when you go to India, you spend time there. You see that everything is always open. Maybe at night, they close things up, keep the more intimidating creatures out. But during Ramana's time, he never did that even. They always left the doors open and so on. And there are lots of pictures in the archives and in the books of his life. All sorts of creatures coming to sit with him. Peacocks, the cow would come in, and Nandi would come in and put her head down near his feet, and he would rub her head, and then she would walk out. There are pictures of him sitting like this with the chipmunk sitting in his hand. And he spoke to the animals a lot whenever they were around. There's a great story that I always loved about this cobra that used to come. There was a king cobra that used to come and sit at the foot of his tucket. And it would just stand there looking at him. And one day it came and it stood. And then Bhagavan heard the cackle of a peacock out in the tree outside the meditation hall. And he looked over at the cobra and he said, "You better go, he will come and kill you." Because peacocks don't tolerate snakes. They kill them instantly. And the cobra dropped himself down and went out the door. And a couple of minutes later, the peacock came in looking for him. And then the peacock sat there for a few minutes, so this gave the cobra the opportunity to leave. But yeah, the monkeys would come and sit with him, and when he was in the forest on the mountain, he would sit with the monkeys. There are these great monkeys in Tiruvannamalai. There are two types. One is called what is that one called? I can't recall. It's about this tall, it's gray. Rhesus monkey. And they're quite the tricksters, and they get into everything. And if you have anything free or loose in your hand when you're walking on the mountain or through the ashram or on the road, they'll run right up to you, and they know that if you're not looking, that you don't have a good grip on it. Whatever it is, a water bottle, a banana, a packet of biscuits or cookies, and they'll run right up just as swift as can be and just snatch it out of your hand, and then go sit up in a tree, grinning at you as they eat it. They're very smart. I was sitting on the steps out in front of the ashram one time, and I had a water bottle sitting next to me. I had my water bottle, I set it there. And I didn't see this monkey coming. He came from behind, snatched my water bottle and went up the post to the top of the roof, and then sat there looking at me and went, and unscrewed the cap off the top of the water bottle and threw it down and drank the water, and then threw the water bottle down.
Wow.
But there are these other monkeys, which are called langurs. So even though I talk about these things and I read you these things from the teaching, from the scripture, I want you to always remember the aim of the inquiry, of the practices, is not to have you always be doing something with your mind around some form of the practice. It's rather to get you comfortable, if you will, with doing nothing at all, or just being. Some of you have already noticed how difficult it is to just be. And I don't mean, when I say do nothing at all, I don't mean your body doesn't act and you don't work in the world and you don't interact with people. I mean you don't do anything while that's going on. The mind is not interpreting, suggesting, seeking to understand, commenting on everything that's being experienced. To come to understand that this particular habitual function of the mind can be dropped at any given moment. This is the only reason that we practice, really. It's to come to understand that we are already here as awareness itself, and all of our opinions about it don't matter. If you know that you are, if you know I am here, if you know I am aware, if you are aware that you are aware, everything else will unfold from that. That you don't need to be in control. You don't need to manipulate with your mind or your body the people and the situations in which you find yourself. You can be much more playful in them, and you don't have attachment to an outcome. When you know that you are awareness itself, or you know that you are that which is aware, and the objects are just coming and going through their impermanent nature. So this is the time during the satsang when you get to inquire about what kind of thorn you can use to remove the thorn you're currently being pricked by, if there are any. This is the time that we all have come to rely on rosemary. Who always has such immediate and pertinent questions.
I guess I have a question. Maybe it's not so much a question, but an observation.
Okay.
there is sickness in the world, right? There is sickness that we experience.
Yeah, in the body.
Yeah, body and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
So it seems,
yeah. And I feel like that a sickness in my mind is that the chaos has gotten so intense that there's no energy left, there's no even memory left to practice anything, because it is so overloaded, it is so preoccupied, distracted, sick, whatever you want to call it, that literally, like, the memory's not there to bring you to question anything. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, but you see, that's the whole point of coming to satsang, is that satsang gives us the opportunity not to be engaged with all of that, and just to put everything down. That's why I never ask you to take up all kinds of practices, to do this, to do that. That can be helpful. Understand that if you're in that state, it can be helpful to pull attention away from all of that dialogue that's going on in the mind. You say it's going on in the world, but understand it begins in the mind.
Sure.
So, I mean, practices like mindfulness of breathing or prostration, something physical, circumambulating the mountain, which is a popular thing to do in Asia, finding a sacred holy hill and walking around it slowly with a mindful awareness that you're walking around a sacred hill. But here, I'm not interested in giving you anything else to do, because this mind is already busy and cluttered. So that's why I just encourage you to come and just to sit. We listen to a little mantra for a bit, that soothes the mind and the jangled nerves from being face to face with the world all the time.
But what if the mind is too sick? What if it can't?
Then I'll ask you this question. Does that mean that you're ready to give up on the mind?
Does it mean that it's ready to give up on itself? I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's got its own
So
delusional path.
then is there you and there is the mind?
That fluctuates. Sometimes I feel like I'm the mind, I'm the one in control with the thoughts, and then sometimes I feel like I'm taken by the thoughts on a ride.
So, can you see any place where there is an I which is not the mind? Is there any way or any experience in which you know yourself and there is no mind present?
No mind present?
Yeah, when there is no thought.
Sleeping, maybe?
Okay, so right now, in this moment, is there a mind? Tigers, when they're adults, are black-faced monkey. They're about anywhere between 5 and 6 feet tall, and they have a tail that's just about the same length as their body. And these monkeys are the meditators of the monkey clan. And there are these beautiful, enormous monkeys, and they're so low-key and so quiet and so still. and they're very patient. They won't come and take anything from you, but they will come and just sit with you. And you can go up on the mountain, and I've even had this happen in a restaurant, where a Langor will come and just sit on the rock next to you. If you sit there for 40 minutes in a meditation, the monkey will sit there with you. So beautiful. Or they'll come and they'll just climb up on the edge of the wall, like because restaurants are all pretty much all open air anyway. A lot of rooftop restaurants, so there's just a half wall, and the Langors will come and just sit, and they'll just look at us. They'll watch you eat. They'll sit there and eat. And if you look at them too long, they look away, like they're not paying attention to you. And then if you look away from them, they look back at you again. Some objects are more interesting than others, eh? All these beings. So one of the reasons that we undertake this practice is because it becomes our nature to watch the way in which attention goes toward objects. And it's not because we want to be separating everything into, it's not the reductionist way of doing things. Meditation is not necessarily about the reductionist way of doing things like a lot of science is. We want to get from the macro to the micro and understand all the pieces along the way. With the inquiry and our daily practice, we're not so interested in that. We're more interested in the way in which attention, perception moves toward objects, so that we can understand that as a creative principle, but also so that we can see that consciousness flows through everything. And this is what brings us from this idea that we are separate to we are unified. It's not just coming back to knowing ourselves as empty space. This is where a lot of spiritual traditions, a lot of spiritual teachers will stop. It's like coming back to emptiness and knowing that you are emptiness. Now remain there, everything is fine. But this is not the end of it. Not in Vedanta, and not in the actual experience of awakening. What begins to happen is there's the recognition that the attention that flows outwardly is not the problem. It's just a function of mental state, of mind. And that where it flows is not a problem. But in order to know this, right, because otherwise we're always pulling ourselves back from objects. This is what all the teachings are always about, pulling ourselves back from objects. But there is this moment where that pulling back begins to flow outward again, but it doesn't flow out through the I principle. It flows out through the recognition that all is consciousness. You can actually see, I say you, but of course that's not the personal you at this moment, right? At this moment it can be seen that the attention which has been flowing outward is nothing more than the movement of awareness as it shifts from one object to another, as it moves through the world, as it moves through mind. This is all that's happening. And then you can begin to see that the things you think you need to get away from are actually the things that are there to teach you the most. That what you've been trying to get away from, even through your practice, to become liberated, to become awakened, is actually just the form of mind which is present to teach you in that moment. It's an expression that awareness, you can say, is using to get you to see that you are all, that you are everything. Of course, not the separate small you, but you, the isness, the suchness. That all of this is only that.
It feels like maybe right now that I'm the victim of the mind.
And you know this because?
I wouldn't say I know it, I feel like I experience it.
So
Because it's automatic and I'm actually
what is
somewhat
automatic?
aware, like the mind's mental chatter is
Yeah.
automatic, or it's
All right.
messages of
Yes,
suffering.
yes, and you just pointed toward your release from that. You said, and I'm aware of those thoughts.
But I'm the victim of them.
But who knows that? Look right now.
Mhm.
This isn't a mental exercise. Look.
Okay.
Right? So the mind just said, I am a victim of that. Right? Now look for that I. Don't pay attention to the thought, am a victim of that. Look for the I.
Mhm.
What do you
Okay.
see?
Well, I guess that which isn't the mind.
No, that's just guessing. I want you to look. Come right now into the experience of I-ness.
Come into it.
Yes, just be I for a moment.
Okay.
Don't follow I with a thought. Don't look for a thought. Can you just be there, a body against the wall?
Well, in this moment, I feel way too confused to even answer that.
Who knows that? What
The
knows
only-
there's
the
confusion
only-
there?
Thing I got here, which is, it feels like the mind.
Yeah, that's why you're
Because,
saying.
I mean,
yeah.
that's the confused
That's why, yeah,
entity
that's
or
because you're
object.
looking at the mind, right?
Mhm.
Who's looking at the mind?
Well, the one that's aware.
Can you see that one?
Not without attaching it to the
No,
mind.
that's right, that's right. You cannot see that one without attaching it to the mind. However, can you be that one? No, you just made an attempt to attach it to the mind. I could see it in your eyes.
I think I'm too tired to.
No, be tired. It's
comprehend.
okay. Be tired. You're trying to follow with the mind, and I'm trying to break that mind. So if you don't hold on to the mind, you will just be awareness of leaning against the wall.
I'll take your word for it. Or maybe I won't. I don't know.
So don't go to the mind for refuge. Right now.
I have no idea how not to. It seems.
Stay here with me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that you're here?
Yes.
How do you know you're here?
Because I feel my body, all my senses.
Okay. Go before your senses now.
The mind just kicks in.
Don't give it any attention. Just drop it and stay here. No, stay here with me. Stay here with me. Just stay here with me.
I don't know what that would be.
That's a judgment. Drop that and stay here.
I don't know if it's a judgment, but an experience
Don't
that
go
I've
to the
had for
mind.
46
Just stay
years.
here. Just stay here. Don't believe what's happened, and there has never been a 46 years. Just drop that and stay here. Don't need to accomplish anything. Don't need to understand anything. Are you here?
I guess so.
You can't say that definitively? You don't know you're here?
Well, I don't know in what state I'm here.
Don't give it any idea about states. States don't matter. States are happening in the mind. That's what we're letting go of at this moment. Just drop all the states or the need to be in a state. Are you here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's enough, because I just can't handle, I can't go there
Okay.
without freaking out, okay?
Okay.
I don't know what it is to be not the mind. I don't know what it is to not
Yes.
go there,
Yes.
okay?
Yes. But you do know what,
Because my mind is sick.
you do know the pain of going there though. So
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll just leave it there then.
Okay.
You know, it's just the acknowledgement of pain and suffering, which is our ally. It brings us to this state that Noelle is experiencing right now. And the reason I say it's our ally is because it brings us to the place where we just don't want to listen to the mind anymore. And this is the state that you're coming to, Noelle, where you're understanding. Your own wisdom is telling you, I can't do this anymore. I have to find another way. So I just would encourage you now to trust that you've already made the effort. You've been coming here for a while now. Some deep wisdom inside of you is telling you to keep coming here. And that by doing so, in some way, you'll understand yourself, you'll end your suffering. So just keep that thought in mind. Okay? The support of all of these people, many of whom started coming for the same reason that you're coming now, is here for you, to help you understand that the path you're on is the path of awakening, and that awakening and suffering are sort of mutually exclusive. So as soon as we can come to the place where you can just be here, and you can, and if I say to you, do you know you are here, and that that's enough for you, is just to be here in this moment. That's the first step on the path to awakening, to letting go of that suffering. And understand that that's what your mind is telling you right now, that it's ready to let go of that suffering, that it wants to do that. That's why you come back. And this is good. And it will come to an end for you. Maybe not as quickly as you'd like. But just keep coming. Just keep being here with me. And when you're out in the world, you can ask yourself, you can remember me sitting here and saying, are you here with me? I will always be saying that to you wherever you are. Are you here? So no matter what you're doing, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on in your mind, hear me saying to you, are you here with me? And when the answer is yes, rest. Give yourself the opportunity to rest, not to control, not to figure out or understand, but just to rest. Because that's what you need most now, is rest. And a Kleenex. See, sometimes all we can do in our experience in the world is just to stand still in the middle of the difficulty. The mind always wants to do something about it. It wants to end it in some way. But all of us have learned through our own experience that doing something is not always the answer. Sometimes doing nothing is the answer. But this takes a great deal of courage, doesn't it? Just to stand still in the middle of what's arising and just be present with it. Not believing I am this which is arising, but rather saying to ourselves in some way, silently, I don't know anything. I don't know to go forward or back. I don't know to go left or right. But what I do know is I am here, and I can stand in this in some way, because I don't have a choice. I've tried everything else for 46 years. I've tried so many different things, and I'm still suffering. So now, all I can acknowledge about any of it is I don't know. I don't know. This takes a great deal of trust, doesn't it? Trusting what? You know, some people would say, well, you trust God, or you trust the teaching, or you trust whatever. The hardest thing to trust is oneself, that one's nature has the answer. If there is an answer, it rests here, not here, here in the heart of being. But we just persist. If you are a practitioner and you're looking for the end of suffering and you're looking for freedom, then sometimes you simply have to stop in the middle of whatever is here and stand. Even you're trembling and shaking. Why? Because everything that's happening in body, mind, and world is impermanent. What I mean by that is it's passing. The state you're in right now, in this moment, was not here an hour ago, a week ago. Maybe a similar state was here, but not this state that you're standing in right now, in this moment. This is different from what looked like it 10 years ago. So even you've been doing this a long time, the one thing you've never done is said, I don't understand this, but I can stand here. I can stand in this somehow. I don't know how. And I don't need to know. And I trust that life has a plan to handle this, to take care of this. And if nothing else, because this arose an hour ago, a minute ago, a day ago, and it's here now, there's a certainty of only one thing, and that is that it will depart. Because all of that in creation, in the world we experience, in perception, that is born will die. Everything which comes will go. This is true of our bodies, it's true of our minds, it's true of the world. Everything which comes into existence leaves. Sometimes, for some of us, this is the most terrifying thing, is that no matter how blissful we are in this moment, there is a recognition, this too shall pass. Right? This can be terrifying. We all experience this loss on a moment-to-moment basis. Sometimes the losses are great, and sometimes they're small. But always we know that whatever is in front of us in this moment, it can't be sustained. So one of the things that we can do when we're in a difficult moment like this is remind ourselves, this can't be sustained either. Just like I cannot control my happiness, I cannot control my unhappiness. It will stay as long as it stays, and then it will go. This is a very difficult thing to do, right? To stand in your unhappiness, in your sorrow, in your fear and your terror, and say, I don't know, but I trust life. That which has brought me here will take care of this. And this may not happen quickly. Our suffering may go on for a long period of time. It may go on for another week, a year, 10 years. But you can know through your own experience that this will pass, because everything which has brought you to this moment has passed. The only thing which does not pass is the awareness itself. And this is why we ask ourselves the question, am I here, or am I aware? In this moment, without regard for what's coming next, without regard for what came before. Because when we come to that moment, what we've said to the universe, to life itself, is I am willing. Guide me, show me. I trust you. In some ways, it can be said that what we have to learn, if we have something to learn in this life, is to love. And we begin by learning to love ourselves just the where we are, in the place that we're at, and to know that we are enough in this moment. This love, which you are, contains everything that you need. Mind, for a long time, can hide this from you.
Rishi, in addition to asking questions, is sharing allowed?
Yes.
Okay. When you said the word courage a few moments ago, just it was right on the tip of my tongue. I was thinking courage about being where we are with what is in the not knowing or the chaos. It does. Courage.
Yes.
And I have found, I have an ever deepening appreciation for the importance of Sangha to help me maintain that courage.
Yes.
When I first started meditating 20 years ago, and 20 years from now I'll look back on this day and say when I was first starting to meditate, probably. But there were the three jewels for me of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha was almost an afterthought.
Yes.
And now it is so front and center, the fellowship to say, yes, you're right in not doing. The rest of the world wants me to do, and I second guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sangha is there to say, yes, not doing is where you need to be. Just being with the chaos and the fear and everything else. And I just wanted to share that. Sangha has really been on my mind and in my heart a lot lately.
Yeah, thank you. And hopefully what happens for everyone is that it's recognized that to come together in community is to come together in the safe space where you can be afraid and you can be in tears and you can feel the heart of everyone in the room while that's happening, so that you can begin to know that what you're seeing around you is an expression of your own self-love and your self-acceptance. To come somewhere like this and to do what you just did takes such courage, and it also gives you the opportunity to see that you are giving yourself love by doing this, by being with those people who know what in their own experience in some way what you're struggling with and what you're suffering through, and who can say to you, yes, just be here with us, don't do anything, we've got you in some way. Yes, absolutely. This aspect of community is often overlooked. Yeah, but this is why in the Buddha's world, in the Buddha's teaching, this is one of the pillars of awakening. And the same is also true in Vedanta. It's just said that the pillar is to spend time in the company of sages. And of course, at one level of understanding, the sages are the ones who are recognized to be sages. But in my experience, the sages are all of you. Because those people who are committed to coming together, to stand courageously in the middle of life itself, with all of its joy and sorrow, and to do that together, this is to be in the company of sages. The place where you are loved and accepted. The place where, regardless of what you are experiencing in this moment, someone can say to you, I see you. I hear your suffering. I feel your suffering. And I am here to say to you, you are not that. You are the self. You are the heart. You are the love that I feel for you. Put everything else down. And the only thing you're required ever to do is just to keep coming here, to support yourself, to stand firm in your conviction that you are the self, that you are awakened being. Whatever follies and foibles you have makes no difference. The things that you currently believe about yourself make no difference. The things you've been told about yourself since you were a child make no difference. The dark places that your mind goes to in these moments of difficulty, they make no difference. You are the self. You are the heart. And each one of you is proof of that to every other one of you. When you look to each other and you see love, acceptance, companionship, community along the way, you are seeing yourself, not your personality, not your difficulty, not your habitual thinking, not your conditioning. You're seeing the self. The place where you are free of all your conditioning, of all your thoughts, of all your beliefs, of everything you've been told. You are free of all of it. And you know this no matter what your mind is saying to you, because you are here. You are here in support of your own freedom. Something deep within you already recognizes that you are free. It's that deep, deep knowing which brings you here. Even your mind tries to claim it. It says, oh no, I am doing this. I am taking you there so that you can relax, so that you can listen. Your mind says, oh yeah, I'm doing that. But there's something much deeper that is doing that. Coming from way inside, saying to you, you are free. Don't worry, you'll get there.
Rishi, what does the word Vedanta mean?
Vedanta? The end. That's the simplest translation I've ever come across.
Vedanta.